I caught my fiancé with my sister while pregnant, and tomorrow I'm exposing everything at our family gathering. Is the little mom-to-be asleep yet? My sister texted him. They laughed about my pregnancy behind my back. When I started reading their messages aloud, their faces turned white. There are moments in your life that feel like they're straight out of a movie. The ones you play over and over in your head, savoring every perfect detail, trying to bottle up the lightning. For me, that moment happened 3 weeks ago, in the quiet of my own bathroom, with the morning sun streaming through the window and making little dust motes dance in the air. I was holding a little white plastic stick, and on its tiny screen were 2 pink lines. 2 pink lines. Not faint, not a maybe. They were bold and defiant and real. My heart didn't just beat, it exploded into a firework display behind my ribs. I pressed a hand to my mouth to stifle a sob of pure, unfiltered joy, my shoulders shaking. After 3 years with my fiancé, Dean, after meticulously building a life together with my sweet 4-year-old daughter, Paige, this was it. This was the final piece of the puzzle, the one I'd been waiting for. We were finally going to be the complete, stable family I'd always dreamed of since I was a little girl. A mom, a dad, and 2 kids. The whole picket fence fantasy. Paige would have a little brother or sister to boss around and to protect. I would have another child with the man I loved, a child that would have his eyes and maybe my stubborn chin. It was everything. I must have stared at that positive test for 10 solid minutes, just grinning like an absolute fool, my reflection beaming back at me in the mirror. My mind was already racing, a high-speed train of happy plans. I pictured Dean's face when I told him, that slow, handsome smile spreading across his lips before he'd lift me up and spin me around the kitchen. I pictured Paige's excitement, her little hands gently touching my belly. I could already see the nursery we would decorate, arguing playfully over paint colors. I imagined holidays, 2 little stockings hanging on the mantel instead of 1, the house filled with twice the laughter, twice the chaos, twice the love. We weren't just a couple with a child from my past anymore, we were creating something new, together. A real family, bound by blood and by love. I'm 28 years old. I've been through my share of heartbreak, enough to make me cautious. But for the first time in a long time, the future didn't feel scary. It felt certain. Dean was a good man, or so I believed with every fiber of my being. He was wonderful with Paige, teaching her how to throw a ball and patiently answering her million why questions. Our life together, while not a fairy tale, was happy. It was real. It was ours. This baby was supposed to be our anchor, the thing that solidified our bond forever, making us unshakable. I spent the whole day floating on a cloud of secret joy, planning the perfect way to tell him. I decided on a special dinner, his favorite meal, and bought a tiny pair of baby booties to put in a gift box with the pregnancy test. I wanted the moment to be as magical as the feeling in my heart. I was so naive. So blissfully, stupidly naive. I thought I was at the beginning of the most beautiful chapter of my life. I had no idea I was actually standing at the edge of a cliff, about to be pushed over the edge by the 2 people I trusted most in the world. That night, when I finally told him, I thought the dream was just beginning. But it was already over. I just didn't know it yet. That evening, the house was filled with the warm, comforting smell of roasting chicken. I'd gone all out, garlic mashed potatoes, green beans, the works. A bottle of sparkling cider was chilling for me, a cold beer waiting for him. Paige was happily building a lopsided tower of blocks in the living room, humming to herself. Everything was perfect, a perfect domestic scene. When Dean walked through the door from his job at the construction firm, I could barely contain the smile that was threatening to split my face in 2. "Hey, you," he said, giving me a quick, distracted peck on the cheek as he dropped his keys in the bowl by the door. He looked tired, his shoulders slumped under the weight of the day. "Hey, yourself," I beamed, taking his coat. "Tough day?" "The usual," he mumbled, loosening his tie as he walked towards the kitchen. "Wow, what's all this?" "Smells amazing." Just felt like celebrating, I said, my voice practically singing with anticipation. Go wash up. Dinner's ready. We sat down to eat, and for a little while, everything felt normal. We talked about his day, a problem with a supplier, a funny argument between two of his guys. We talked about a funny thing Paige had said that afternoon. It was the easy, comfortable chatter of a couple who knew each other inside and out. Or so I thought. I waited, my heart hammering against my ribs, until Paige had finished and was back to her blocks. I'd put the little gift box on the chair beside me. I have something for you, I said, my hands trembling slightly as I retrieved it and slid it across the table to him. He looked confused, a small frown creasing his brow. It's not my birthday. Just open it, I urged, leaning forward in my seat. He untied the ribbon and lifted the lid. He stared at the tiny baby booties and the pregnancy test nestled inside the box, and for a long moment, he said nothing. The silence was deafening. It stretched and stretched until it became a physical weight in the room, pressing down on my chest. I watched his face, waiting for the explosion of joy, for him to leap up and swing me around. It never came. His face went pale, a sickly, ashen color under the warm kitchen lights. He looked up from the box, and his eyes were blank. There was no joy. No excitement. Just a flicker of something I couldn't identify. Shock? Fear? Annoyance? Wow, he said, and the word was a puff of air, completely devoid of emotion. He put the box down on the table as if it were contaminated. You're sure about this? It felt like a punch to the gut. Yes, Dean. I'm sure. I'm pregnant, I said, my own joy rapidly dissolving into a cold, sickening dread. Right, he said, running a hand through his hair, a nervous tic I'd seen 1,000 times. He stood up and started pacing the length of the kitchen. Okay. A baby. Wow. Aren't you happy? I asked, my voice small, pathetic. Yeah, of course. Of course, I'm happy, he said, the words sounding rehearsed and hollow. He still wouldn't look at me. It's just a lot to take in right now. I just need a minute. I'm gonna go for a drive. Just need to clear my head. And just like that, he was gone. He grabbed his keys from the bowl and walked out the door without a backward glance, leaving me standing alone in the kitchen with the smell of roasted chicken and the wreckage of my perfect moment. The front door clicked shut, and the silence he left behind was louder than any argument. That was the first crack. The first sign that the beautiful picture I had in my head was a lie, and the mirror was about to shatter into a million jagged pieces. To understand the full depth of what happened next, you need to understand my sister, Valerie. She's 2 years older than me, and for as long as I can remember, she's been the sun everyone else orbited around. She's beautiful, charismatic, and has a way of making every situation, every room, every conversation, about her. Growing up, I was the quiet one, the responsible one. Audrey, the good girl, the bookworm. Valerie was the wild child, the one who always had a dramatic story to tell, the one our relatives always gushed over at family gatherings. I loved her, of course. She's my sister. But our relationship was complicated. It was built on a lifetime of me swallowing my feelings to keep the peace. She had a talent for the backhanded compliment, the little dig that sounded like a joke but was designed to cut you down to size. Oh, Audrey, that dress is so brave of you, she'd say with a dazzling smile. Or, it's so sweet how you don't care about being popular or having the right friends. Every compliment was a veiled insult. When relatives were around, she'd throw her arm around me, playing the part of the doting, protective older sibling. The second they were gone, she'd be on her phone, and I knew she was texting her friends, likely making fun of my boring life or my sensible shoes. I just tolerated it. It was easier than causing a scene, and a part of me, a small, insecure part, always felt like maybe she was right. Maybe I was just the quiet, uninteresting one. I remember my high school graduation party. My parents had thrown a big barbecue in the backyard. I was so proud. I was the first in our family to get a substantial scholarship for college. But halfway through the party, Valerie showed up an hour late with a new boyfriend, a guy with a flashy car and a loud mouth. Suddenly, the entire party shifted its axis. Everyone was fawning over them, listening to their stories about some wild trip they'd just taken. My graduation, my achievement, became an afterthought. When I tried to pull her aside and tell her I was hurt, she just laughed. "Oh, Audrey, don't be so dramatic," she'd said, waving a dismissive hand. "Lighten up. It's just a party." It wasn't just in our youth. Even after I met Dean, she was the same. She'd flirt with him right in front of me, in a way she could pass off as a joke. "If Audrey ever messes up, Dean, you know who to call," she'd say with a wink. I'd laugh along, feeling a prickle of discomfort, while Dean would just chuckle and shake his head. I told myself it was just Valerie being Valerie. Harmless. Attention-seeking. I never, ever thought he would take her seriously. I never imagined that toxic energy would crawl its way into the heart of my own home, into my relationship. I always saw her as a family problem, an annoyance I had to manage at holidays. I never saw her for what she truly was, a predator, waiting for a moment of weakness. And with me pregnant and vulnerable, she saw her opening. The days after the pregnancy announcement were a blur of cold shoulders and quiet, suffocating tension. Dean was a ghost in our own home. His excuse of being stressed with work became a permanent state of being. He started working late almost every single night. When he was home, he was glued to his phone, his thumb constantly scrolling, a faint, bluish light illuminating his detached face. The device, which used to be left carelessly on the coffee table or the kitchen counter, was now his constant companion. It went with him to the bathroom, to the garage, and at night, it lay face down on his nightstand, as if guarding its secrets from me. I tried to talk to him, to bridge the terrifying canyon that had opened up between us. I'd say, "Dean, what's wrong? We need to talk about the baby, make plans." He'd just sigh, a heavy, put-upon sound that made me feel like a burden. "There's nothing to talk about, Audrey. I told you I'm happy. I'm just stressed with work. There's a big project deadline coming up." Always an excuse. Always a reason to push me away. The intimacy we'd shared, the easy affection, vanished overnight. He'd roll over with his back to me in bed, creating a chasm of cold sheets between us. My excitement about the baby, the one thing I wanted to share with him more than anything, became a forbidden topic. Every time I brought it up, he would shut down, his face closing off like a steel door. It was like a wall had gone up between us, and I was on the outside, screaming and clawing at the bricks, desperate to be let in. Then the phone calls started. He'd take them in the other room, or step out onto the back porch, his voice a low, secretive murmur. If I walked in, he'd hang up abruptly. "Wrong number," he'd say, a little too quickly, not quite meeting my eyes. Social media notifications would flash on his screen and then disappear before I could see who they were from. My gut, that primal instinct that every woman has, was in knots. It was twisting and turning, telling me that this wasn't just stress. This was betrayal. One evening, he was on the back porch, on the phone again. I was in the kitchen, pretending to wash dishes, but really, I was listening. I couldn't hear the words, but I heard the one thing I couldn't mistake, his laugh. It wasn't his normal, everyday laugh. It was a low, intimate chuckle. The kind of laugh he used to share with me, late at night, when we were the only two people awake in the world. A hot flash of anger and raw jealousy crawled up my neck. Who was he talking to? Who was making him laugh like that when he could barely stand to look at his pregnant fiancé? I started to feel like I was losing my mind. Was I just being a crazy, hormonal pregnant woman? Was I imagining things? That's what he wanted me to think. But deep down, I knew. I knew I wasn't crazy. I was being played for an absolute fool. And I was about to find out just how deep and how sick the deception ran. The breaking point came on a Tuesday night, exactly 1 week after my world had tilted on its axis. Dean had come home late again, smelling faintly of a perfume that wasn't mine, a musky, expensive scent I knew wasn't from any of his female coworkers. He gave a mumbled excuse about having drinks with guys from the office to celebrate closing a deal, showered, and was asleep within minutes, his back turned to me. But I was wide awake. The knots in my stomach had twisted into a solid ball of ice. The suspicion was eating me alive. I lay there in the dark, listening to his steady, even breathing, and a cold, calm resolve washed over me. I had to know. Even if it destroyed me, I had to know the truth. I slipped out of bed, my feet silent on the cool hardwood floor. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel the frantic rhythm in my ears, a drumbeat of dread. The room was dark, but his phone on the nightstand was illuminated by the faint glow of the moonlight through the window. It felt like a beacon, calling to me, promising answers I wasn't sure I wanted. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely control them. This was a line I'd never crossed. I'd always believed that trust was the foundation of a relationship, and snooping was a violation of that. But what do you do when you know, with every fiber of your being, that the trust is already gone, that the foundation has already crumbled to dust? I picked up the phone. It felt heavy, dangerous, like a loaded weapon in my hand. My hands were slick with sweat. I typed in his passcode, Paige's birthday. The irony was so thick it was sickening. The screen lit up, blinding me for a second. My eyes scanned the message notifications. A few from his work group chat, one from his mom. And then I saw it. A thread at the very top, from a name that made my blood run cold. Valerie. My sister. My breath caught in my throat. My mind raced, trying to find a plausible, innocent explanation. Maybe she was asking about the party. Maybe she was checking in on me. It couldn't be. It had to be a coincidence. A misunderstanding. My fingers, acting of their own accord, tapped on the thread. It opened, and the world as I knew it cracked, splintered, and then ceased to exist. The very first message I saw, the most recent one from just a few hours earlier, was from her. It read, "Is the little mom to be asleep yet?" I had to physically sit down on the floor. My knees just gave out. I folded in half, pressing a hand over my mouth to keep from screaming out loud and waking the monster sleeping in my bed. The air was sucked out of my lungs. I read it again, and then again, the words and the sickening winking emoji blurring through the hot tears that were now streaming down my face. The casual cruelty of it, the absolute disrespect. It was them. It was real. I scrolled up, my thumb moving mechanically, a detached observer of my own life's destruction. Message after message, a secret history of their affair laid bare in glowing blue and gray bubbles. The plans to meet up at cheap motels. The inside jokes. The lies they concocted together to deceive me. It was all there. I had gone looking for a reason for his distance, and what I found was a digital dagger, plunged directly into my heart by the two people who were supposed to love me most. I sat on that cold floor for what felt like hours, the phone's pale glow illuminating my tear-streaked face. I couldn't stop scrolling, couldn't stop torturing myself with the evidence of their treachery. It was a morbid fascination, a desperate need to know the full extent of the horror. And it was worse, so much worse, than anything I could have ever imagined. They weren't just hooking up behind my back. They were building a whole world on top of my supposed ignorance. They were reveling in it. They were mocking me. I saw a message from Dean, sent the day after I told him I was pregnant. Audrey dropped the baby bomb last night, it read, accompanied by a facepalm emoji. Total nightmare. Valerie's reply came instantly. LOL. Told you she'd try to trap you. What did you do? Played the shocked but happy fiancé. I think she bought it. She's so clueless. Clueless. The word seared itself into my brain. That's what I was to them. A clueless joke. The inconvenient, pregnant obstacle in the way of their sordid little romance. A problem to be managed. They talked about me constantly, dissecting my personality, my habits, my life. Valerie bragged that our entire family thought she was the more interesting, more popular sibling, while I was just the quiet one who apparently deserved this. She's always been a doormat, one of her texts read. She'll get upset for a week and then she'll get over it. She always does. The most painful part was reading how they'd discussed my pregnancy. He told her about it before he even had a real conversation with me. They joked about how stressed I would be, raising another child. Can you imagine her with 2 kids? Dean had written. The house is already a mess. She won't have time to even think, which is probably for the best. My sister, my own flesh and blood, had replied with a string of laughing emojis. More time for us, then, she wrote. Besides, it's not like you'll have to deal with the messy parts. You can be the fun uncle to your own kid. They even talked about money. Good thing her salary is steady, Dean texted once. We're going to need it with another mouth to feed. As if my income was just a resource for them to exploit. As if my hard work to provide for Paige and save for her college fund was just a convenience for his betrayal. It was a systematic dismantling of my life, my character, my motherhood. Every insecurity I'd ever had, they preyed on it. Every moment of joy I'd felt about this baby, they had tainted it with their laughter and contempt. They had taken something pure and beautiful and twisted it into something ugly and perverse. My tears dried up, replaced by a rage so pure and cold it burned. My hand was steady now. I started taking screenshots. Dozens of them. I documented everything. The timestamps that proved he was with her when he was supposed to be working late. The cruel names they called me. The jokes they made at my expense, and at the expense of my unborn child. Each screenshot was another nail in their coffin. They had built their secret world on the assumption that I was weak and oblivious. They had underestimated me. And they were about to find out just how catastrophically wrong they were. The next morning, I was a ghost. I moved through the motions of making Paige breakfast, pouring cereal and juice, my mind a million miles away. I felt nothing but a cold, hard knot of rage in my stomach. When Dean came into the kitchen, dressed for work and whistling softly, the sheer normalcy of it sent a jolt of fury through me. Morning, he said cheerfully, grabbing the coffee pot. Sleep okay? I didn't answer. I just stared at him, my expression blank. He finally noticed the look on my face, and his chipper demeanor faltered. What's wrong with you? He asked, his tone already defensive. Bad mood today? I know, I said, my voice barely a whisper, but it cut through the morning quiet like a knife. No, what? Audrey, I don't have time for games this morning. I've got an early meeting. I know about you and Valerie. The color drained from his face. For a split second, I saw it, pure, unadulterated panic in his eyes. But it was gone as quickly as it came, replaced by a mask of bold-faced indignation. He actually laughed. It was a hollow, ugly sound that didn't reach his eyes. Valerie? Are you serious? He scoffed, leaning back against the counter. What are you talking about now? Don't lie to me, Dean. Don't you dare lie to my face. I saw the messages on your phone. This was his moment to confess, to break down, to beg for forgiveness, to show 1 single ounce of human remorse. He did none of those things. Instead, he went on the attack. You went through my phone? He yelled, his voice rising, trying to make me the villain. What the hell is wrong with you? That's a complete violation of my privacy. After everything, this is the trust you have in me? A violation of your privacy? I shot back, my own voice finally finding its strength. You're sleeping with my sister while I'm carrying your child, and you want to talk to me about privacy? I am not sleeping with your sister, he insisted, his face turning red with performative anger. Honey, you need to calm down. You're pregnant. Your hormones are all over the place. Are you sure you're not just being a little paranoid? You're imagining things, making these crazy accusations because you're feeling insecure. It was a masterclass in gaslighting. He was twisting reality, trying to make me believe I was the crazy one. That the words I read with my own two eyes were just a figment of my hormonal imagination. It's not in my head. I screamed, tears of pure frustration stinging my eyes. I saw the texts, Dean. The jokes about me, about the baby. The winking emoji. Look, I am not doing this, he said, grabbing his briefcase and keys. You're being hysterical. We'll talk tonight when you've calmed down and can think clearly. He paused at the door and looked me up and down with a condescending, pitying expression. Maybe you should talk to your doctor about this. Your emotional state isn't healthy for the baby. He walked out. He left me shaking with a rage so profound it made me dizzy. He wasn't just a cheater. He was a coward and a manipulator of the highest order. He thought he could make me doubt my own sanity. At that moment, I knew there was no hope for us. I saw a flash of the future, a bitter divorce, a nasty fight over custody, with him using these very tactics, painting me as an unstable mother to a judge. The thought was terrifying, but it also solidified my resolve. I had to get a lawyer. I had to protect myself, and I had to protect my children. After Dean left, a sliver of desperate, pathetic hope remained. It was a stupid hope, but it was there. Maybe Valerie had manipulated him. Maybe she felt some shred of guilt. She was my sister, after all. We shared blood, a childhood, a history. Surely, there was a part of her, buried deep down, that knew this was monstrously wrong. With trembling fingers, I found her number and called her. She answered on the second ring, her voice offensively cheerful and bright. Hey, little sis. What's up? To what do I owe the honor? The casualness of it, the breezy, unconcerned tone, was like a knife twisting in my gut. I know, Valerie, I said, my voice flat and cold, devoid of any emotion. The cheerful tone vanished instantly. Know what? She asked, her voice turning guarded and sharp. About you and Dean. I saw the messages. There was a pause on the other end of the line. I expected denial, excuses, maybe even fake, crocodile tears. I got none of it. What I heard instead was a long, theatrical sigh of annoyance, as if I was a pesky problem she now had to deal with, like a bill she'd forgotten to pay. Oh, for God's sake, Audrey, she said, her voice dripping with condescension. Are you really going to do this? Are you going to make a big drama out of it? I was floored into silence for a moment. Drama? You are sleeping with my fiancé. The man I am having a baby with. You call that drama? Look, she said, her voice becoming sharp and impatient. Whatever is going on between me and Dean is our business. Frankly, you shouldn't have been snooping through his phone like some crazy person. You brought this on yourself. I brought this on myself? I was shrieking now, I couldn't help it. My voice cracked. You are my sister. And you're being hysterical, she snapped back, using the exact same word as Dean. It was chilling. It was clear they had their story straight. They were a team. Dean is a grown man. He can make his own choices. Maybe if you were a little more exciting, a little less of a boring mom, he wouldn't have gotten bored. The cruelty was breathtaking. It was designed to hurt, to hit every insecurity I had. There was no remorse. No shame. Just a cold, hard, reptilian arrogance. You should really keep your mouth shut about this, Audrey, she warned, her voice lowering into something menacing. You'll just end up looking like a crazy, jealous mess. Nobody will believe you over us. They never have. So just stop being so dramatic and deal with it." She hung up. I stared at the phone in my hand, the dial tone buzzing in my ears. It was a vicious alliance. They were united against me, armed with the same lies, the same dismissive language. They thought I was weak. They thought they could shame me into silence. The last bit of hope I had for any kind of reconciliation, any kind of remorse from either of them, died in that phone call. My sister wasn't just a participant in this betrayal, she was a gleeful co-conspirator. And she had just handed me all the motivation I needed to burn their pathetic little world to the ground. The hours after that phone call with Valerie were the darkest of my life. The fury receded, leaving a vast, empty wasteland of pain. I felt utterly and completely alone. The two people who should have been my anchors in the world, my partner and my sister, were now my adversaries. I wandered through my house, a home that now felt like a stage for a lie, every family photo on the wall a monument to my own stupidity. I just cried. I curled up on the sofa and cried until my eyes were swollen and my head throbbed. I cried for the family I thought I had, for the love I thought was real. I cried for the innocent baby growing inside me, a baby conceived in love but now mired in this ugly, toxic sham. Later, I went into Paige's room and sat on the floor beside her bed, watching her sleep. Her face was so peaceful and trusting, her little chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. A wave of protective fury, so fierce it took my breath away, washed over me. How dare they? How dare they bring this poison into her home, into her life? This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about her. It was about the baby. I couldn't let them grow up in a world where this kind of betrayal was normalized, swept under the rug. I couldn't let my daughter see her mother accept being treated like she was worthless. What would that teach her about her own value? And that's when it hit me. The tears stopped. The despair receded, replaced by a clarity so sharp it felt like a shard of ice forming in my chest. I wasn't going to deal with it. I wasn't going to keep my mouth shut. They wanted me to be a victim, to suffer in silence while they laughed behind my back. They were counting on me being too shy, too pregnant, too broken to do anything. No. I was done being the quiet one. I was done being the doormat. An idea, wild and terrifying and beautiful, began to form in my mind. My parents were hosting a casual get-together at their house that weekend. A family barbecue. The whole clan would be there. Ironically, the party was supposed to be a celebration for Dean and me, a chance for us to officially announce the pregnancy to everyone. They wanted drama? I would give them a masterpiece. They thought they could control the narrative, paint me as the crazy one? I would present the evidence, cold and hard and undeniable. I would take their secret and I would put it on display for the whole world to see. Let everyone see exactly who they were. Let the family they cared so much about impressing be their judge and jury. This was the point of no return. I knew it might destroy any chance of a pleasant co-parenting scenario. I knew it would cause a rift in my family that might never heal. But I didn't care anymore. My dignity was on the line. My self-respect. They had set my world on fire. It was only fair that I got to light the match. The next 24 hours were strangely, unnervingly calm. The storm of emotion inside me had subsided, leaving behind a steely, focused resolve. I operated like a machine, a soldier preparing for battle. My mission was clear, and I executed my preparations with a detached efficiency that surprised even myself. I spent the morning meticulously organizing my ammunition. I went through my phone, pulling up every single screenshot I had taken from Dean's phone. I arranged them chronologically in a dedicated photo album, creating a digital timeline of their deceit. I even airdropped them to my tablet for a larger display. I then went to a print shop and printed out the most damning exchanges, the ink dark and stark on the clean white paper. Seeing the vile words in black and white made them feel even more real, more undeniable. It fueled my fire and extinguished any lingering doubts. I thought about the practicalities, the future. I sat down at my computer and created a spreadsheet, listing my income, my expenses, and estimating the costs of a new baby. Dean's salary was more than mine, but he contributed very little to our household expenses beyond his half of the rent. I was the one who managed the budget, who made sure Paige's preschool and future college fund was taken care of. The thought of raising 2 kids on my own was terrifying, but seeing the numbers in front of me, I realized it was possible. Difficult, but possible. I made a mental note to call a lawyer first thing Monday morning. I even researched the best family law firms in the city. That afternoon, I called my mom. I kept it brief, clinical. "Mom," I said, my voice steady. "I need you to know something before the party tomorrow. Dean and I are over. We're breaking up." There was a stunned silence on the other end. "What?" "Audrey, honey, what happened? Is it the baby? Did you have a fight?" "I'll explain everything tomorrow," I said, cutting off her worried questions. "I just need you to be prepared. It's going to be difficult. Please, just trust me. Don't say anything to anyone." I could hear the worry in her voice, but she agreed. She knew me. She knew I wasn't one for drama. If I said it was serious, it was serious. The day of the party, I felt numb. I got Paige dressed in her little yellow sundress, and then I got myself ready. I chose a simple, severe black dress. It felt appropriate, like I was attending a funeral. In a way, I was. It was the funeral for my relationship, for the family I thought I was building, for the woman I used to be. As I drove to my parents' house, with Paige chattering happily in the backseat about seeing her cousins, a wave of fear washed over me. Was I really about to do this? Was I about to detonate a nuclear bomb in the middle of my own family? A part of me screamed to turn the car around, to just pack my bags and disappear. But then I looked in the rearview mirror at my daughter's innocent face. And I put a protective hand on my belly. I was fighting for them now. They deserved a mother who stood up for herself. As I pulled into my parents' driveway and saw Dean's truck already parked there, I took one last deep breath. The calm was over. The storm was here. I walked into a house buzzing with cheerful chaos. It was a perfect late summer afternoon. Aunts, uncles, and cousins were gathered in the living room and spilling out onto the back patio. The smell of my dad's famous barbecue ribs filled the air. And there they were, standing together near the fireplace, laughing with my uncle. Dean and Valerie. They looked so comfortable, so completely at ease, like the king and queen of the party. The sight of them, so brazen in their deception, sent a jolt of pure adrenaline through my veins, washing away the last of my fear. My mother rushed over the second I stepped inside, her face etched with worry. "Audrey, honey, can we please just talk in the kitchen for a minute?" she whispered, trying to steer me away from the crowd. "Not right now, Mom," I said, my voice quiet but firm. I gently pulled my arm away from her grip. "I need to do this." I walked straight into the center of the living room, placing my purse, which contained the printed evidence, on the coffee table. The chatter died down as people noticed the look on my face. Dean and Valerie turned, their smiles fading slightly when they saw my expression. Valerie rolled her eyes, a subtle, dismissive gesture that only I would notice. Dean looked annoyed, probably thinking I was about to make a scene about him being late or something trivial. "Could I have everyone's attention, please?" I asked. My voice didn't shake. It was as clear and cold as ice, cutting through the warm, happy atmosphere of the party. The room fell silent. "I know you all came here today to celebrate with me and Dean, and to hear our happy news. But there's been a change of plans." I held up my phone. "Dean and I are over. And I think you all, as our family, deserve to know the real reason why." I saw Dean take a step forward, his mouth opening to protest, a fake, placating smile already forming. But I didn't give him the chance. I started reading. I'm going to read you some messages from a private conversation between my fiancé, Dean, and my sister, Valerie, I announced. A collective gasp went through the room. My Aunt Clara's hand flew to her mouth. I started with the first one I'd seen. Is the little mom to be asleep yet? This was sent from Valerie to Dean 3 nights ago, while I was at home with my daughter. I didn't look up. I just kept reading, my voice a steady, relentless monotone, letting the vile words hang in the air. I read his text calling me clueless. I read her text calling me a doormat. I read their jokes about my pregnancy, about how stressed I would be, about how he wouldn't have to deal with the messy parts. The room was utterly silent, save for the sound of my voice and the distant sizzle of the grill outside. I could feel dozens of pairs of eyes darting between me, a stone-faced Dean, and a rapidly paling Valerie. I read out the timestamps, proving he was with her on nights he claimed to be with his dying grandmother or working late. Valerie was the first to break. She's lying, she shrieked, her voice high and defensive. She's making it all up. She's crazy. She's always been jealous of me. I ignored her. I just kept reading. The messages spoke for themselves. I got to the part where Dean told her about the pregnancy. He told her about my baby before he even had a real, honest conversation with me, I said, finally looking up and letting my eyes sweep across the horrified faces of my family. And they laughed. They laughed about me, and they laughed about my child. That's when Dean finally found his voice. This is ridiculous, he boomed, trying to sound authoritative. Audrey is misinterpreting things. She's pregnant, she's emotional. She's clearly not well. This is a private matter. But it was too late. The damage was done. No one was looking at me like I was crazy. They were looking at him and at my sister with pure, undisguised disgust. The reckoning had arrived, and it was everything I had hoped it would be. Dean's desperate attempt to paint me as the unstable one backfired spectacularly. In that room, surrounded by my family, people who had known me my entire life, his gaslighting had no power. They weren't seeing a hysterical pregnant woman, they were seeing a man, a future husband and father, desperately trying to lie his way out of a corner he'd built for himself. They were seeing my sister, the golden child, for the venomous snake she truly was. My dad, a man of few words, who had always had a soft spot for Dean, just stared at the floor, his face like stone, his jaw working silently. My mother looked horrified, her hand covering her mouth as she looked back and forth between her 2 daughters, the betrayal warring with a mother's pain on her face. Valerie, seeing that no one was buying her she's a liar defense, switched tactics. She burst into tears, loud, theatrical, gulping sobs. How could you do this to me, Audrey, she wailed, clutching her chest as if she'd been stabbed. In front of everyone. You always have to be the center of attention. You've ruined everything. It was such a classic Valerie move, twisting the situation to make herself the victim. But this time, it didn't work. The room remained silent. No one rushed to comfort her. My uncle just shook his head slowly in disbelief. Finally, Dean snapped. The charming facade crumbled, revealing the ugly, cornered animal underneath. I'm not staying for this, he snarled, his face contorted with rage. He wasn't sorry. He was just mad he got caught. He stormed past me, shoving my shoulder hard as he went, and slammed the front door behind him. The sound echoed through the silent house, a punctuation mark on the end of our relationship. With her partner in crime gone, Valerie's tears instantly dried up. Her face hardened into a mask of pure hatred. You're a dramatic liar who blew everything out of proportion, she hissed at me, her voice low and venomous so only I and a few others could hear. I hope you're happy. You've destroyed this family. And with that, she too grabbed her purse and stormed out, leaving a trail of shock and devastation in her wake. The moment the door closed behind her, the tense silence was broken. My aunt came over and wrapped her arms around me in a fierce hug. I am so sorry, honey, she whispered. My mother finally moved, coming to my side, her eyes filled with tears of her own. "Oh, Audrey," was all she could say. The fallout had begun. My world had been blown up, just as I'd planned. But as I stood there, surrounded by the wreckage, I didn't feel regret. I felt relief. The poison was out. The secret was dead. The silence had been broken. My family was in shock, but they were with me. The lies had been exposed to the light, and they had withered and died on the vine. I had lost a fiancé and a sister that day, but I had reclaimed something far more valuable, my truth. And my dignity. The party was over, but my new life was just beginning. The days that followed were a strange mix of numb and heartbroken, but also incredibly liberating. My ex-fiancé, Dean, texted me non-stop for 48 hours. The messages were a chaotic symphony of manipulation. One moment, he was begging for forgiveness, saying he'd made a terrible mistake and loved only me. The next, he was blaming me for humiliating him, calling me vindictive and cruel. There was zero genuine remorse. It was all about his bruised ego. I read a few, just to confirm what I already knew, then I blocked his number. I did the same with Valerie, who had sent a single, venomous text, "You will regret this." I didn't bother to reply. I had nothing left to say to either of them. My first call on Monday morning wasn't to my mom. It was to the best family lawyer in the city. I sat in her plush office and laid out the whole story, my voice steady. I showed her the screenshots. She listened patiently, her expression never changing. When I was done, she looked at me and said, "Good for you. Now let's protect you and your children." The words were like a balm on my raw nerves. We immediately started the process to formally end my engagement, to ensure I would have full custody of the baby I was carrying, and to formally establish a child support agreement for both Paige and the new baby that was based on his actual salary, not what he claimed he could afford. Taking that step, protecting my children legally, felt like taking back control of my life. The family was fractured, but supportive of me. My parents were devastated, struggling to comprehend how one of their daughters could betray the other so deeply. My dad stopped speaking to Valerie entirely. My mom tried to mediate, but Valerie refused to take any responsibility, sticking to her story that I was a jealous liar. Eventually, even my mom had to accept the ugly truth. There are still moments when the heartbreak washes over me, usually late at night when the house is quiet. A sharp, sudden pang of what I thought I had and what I lost. But then I feel a little kick in my belly, a tiny flutter of the new life I'm carrying, or I watch Paige sleep, her face so perfect and peaceful, and I know I did the right thing. I chose myself. I chose my children. I'm no longer being trampled on in silence. Dean and Valerie can't laugh behind my back anymore. They can lie to other people, twist the story, and play the victims all they want. But my family knows the truth. And I know the truth. I built my life around a man and a sister who were made of lies, and now I get to build a new future on my own terms, on a foundation of truth and self-respect. It will be painful, and it will be hard, but I will do everything in my power to create a happy, peaceful life for my kids, far away from the ashes of my past. A new dawn is coming. I can feel it. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It means the world to me to finally be able to share it. I have to ask you all, if you were in my shoes, would you have done the same thing? Let me know in the comments below. And if you'd like to hear more, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel.